Need it.
No. Bolve.
Hello and welcome along to our watch along. It is the final match of the league stage, and of course, it is India up against Netherlands, who are really just fighting for their space in the top 8 to make sure that they do make it to the Champions Trophy in 2025 in Pakistan. Man, what a tournament it has been. The group stage is complete today. And of course, India just really playing to just maintain that unbeaten record at the top of the table. Here to unpack all the games with me,
Happy
Mr.
Diwali.
Happy Diwali.
To
Feels very
all
good.
my friends,
And
your
to
fans, South Africa, Proteas, Zimbabwe,
everybody.
Angola.
Everybody. Happy Diwali.
Happy Diwali to you too, girl.
How are you guys doing?
Sleep deprived, hungry, famished, waiting for our feast.
But
of
we can do
sweets
this.
and-
Is it homemade sweet? I've been
Yes,
enjoying the
absolutely.
homemade sweet so much.
I think we are blessed to have our chef. I think a
She's the
little
best.
word of thanks to our chef who's kept us going for a month now. You
Yeah.
girls have been eating Indian food
Yeah, definitely.
and been talking Indian cricket all this while.
Mm.
So yeah, everything Indianness. The only thing that you're missing is Indian outfits. But
Yeah,
don't worry, we are
yeah.
getting there. Our
Sorry.
Diwali celebrations are delayed, as you know,
Yeah.
but we are going there.
Yeah, I've only had one problem with the celebration so far.
The
The
crackers.
firecrackers. Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness.
Don't take it to heart, you know, she's South
Not at all.
African.
Not at
When
all.
I hear such
There's
sounds,
no
it's
need to
usually-
explain,
it's
girl.
usually,
No. It's
trauma.
triggering. Let's just
Yeah.
say that.
Trauma.
Yeah.
She's sledging on South
It's
Africa.
traumatic.
But it's lovely to see South African and a Zimbabwean talking to each other in a friendly manner. Usually they're not very friendly when they're on the pitch, but
Yeah.
great banter that we have.
Oh,
That's-
yes.
Yeah.
We're saving it best for last for Diwali.
Oh, yeah.
Let's get on to our Cricket World Cup.
Yes.
Go on.
So I think it's been a very great tournament so far. You know,
Yes.
I don't know if you guys would have predicted the teams that are in the top 4 to be in the top 4. Personally, I think that coming into this World Cup, I thought the defending champions obviously will just want to, you know, defend their title. But they've really had a very horrible start and
Yeah.
seem to have had a great finish to the tournament, you know, just winning yesterday's match against Pakistan. You also have had Afghanistan, who really performed well for me, I think, in this World Cup. I think they also deserve to be in the top 4, but it wasn't to be. So what are just your overall thoughts, guys, on this whole World Cup?
Go on. You bat first.
Yeah, you know, I think it's been great. I will keep expressing and keep making sure
That's
that
what
I
we are not paid
reiterate
for.
and
But
make
we're
sure I
free.
keep reiterating the fact that it's great to see associate nation teams put up their
Yes.
hand and say, we're not just here to participate. We're not just a team you can consider to be extra 2 points. Yeah, you know, maybe Netherlands up against one of the toughest oppositions they've faced this entire World Cup. Win or lose today, they walk away with their shoulders up because they've done great things. They beat Pakistan, they beat Sri Lanka as well along
Yeah.
the way. They beat South Africa.
Yeah.
So
Did
It's
you enjoy
okay.
that comment
It's okay.
or the game?
I mean, I didn't enjoy the game. I think obviously we underestimated Netherlands, you know, by deciding to chase that one, you know, but I don't think it really was a game for us to lose. But I'll keep saying that maybe we just needed that one to, you know, just
Yes.
change the issues that we have
Yes.
in chasing. And hopefully, I think we did really well in the last encounter that we chased the match and we won that one. So super excited for the semis. Hopefully they bring it back home. And I know if they do win against Australia,
I think
I
she's
know
still
who we're
got a
gonna
hangover
face.
of the Rugby World Cup which they've won,
oh yes.
and they're celebrating still.
Christmas started early in South Africa.
So imagine
But
what
it's
this
cricket, you
would
know,
mean to
those
us.
two ball games are different.
But imagine if we do win, what that would mean for the entire country.
Definitely.
It's December the whole year next year.
Yeah, till
You
like
know how it
February.
goes in South
Yeah,
Africa.
till
Yeah.
like February, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
That's for sure.
So,
And-
so to come back to your question, I think I was the first one to write that there are 3 countries that I got it right. I did say South Africa is going to go good because in the last 20 matches, I looked at their strike rate, their batting, the chasing, and the stats clearly screamed that South Africa is there to be in the top 3.
Yeah.
When I wrote it, I've got some friends of mine, they were not too happy or pleased with it. I mean, first of all, who bothers reading cricket when they see it on television or on the mobile?
Yeah.
But somehow they managed to read it because I was insisting, hey, this is what my prediction is. The big prediction that I got wrong with 20,000 million people in this world is that England was to be a four favorite, which I got it
Yeah.
horribly wrong. Now they
Mm-hmm.
were languishing at some stage at the bottom. Thank
Mm.
God to their two victories that they managed to bring some smiles, but more jeers to their performance. So I think we got right when it comes to India, Australia, New
South
Zealand.
Africa.
Uh, I was thinking Pakistan may make it.
I mean, they fought till the last day. Yesterday, they still had hopes to
Surprisingly not.
make it.
I'll tell you
Yeah.
why.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you why. They defeated three lower ranked teams, which is expected out of them.
Yeah.
But just imagine chasing 401. What are you looking at?
Scorecard.
Yes, what is that?
Oh yeah.
I thought it's the Swiggy order that you just ordered,
Oh
your
no, no,
prawn
no,
fried
no, no.
rice.
Currently, India is sitting at 121 for the loss of one, having just lost only Shubman Gill at the start of the game.
121.
Yes.
Not
15. Hey,
bad. In how many overs?
The network is trying to let me know how many
But
overs.
but
I'd say
let me
roughly
check.
about 15 overs or so.
Let me just check
which
for
is
you.
good.
Yeah, definitely.
Around
They're
8 or
flying.
9.
Yeah, they're flying. They started the game going at eights and they've been
Since
maintaining it.
16 overs.
Not bad.
Yeah.
Not bad. I think
Not
this
at
is one
all.
of the fastest power players we could look at. But take a step back. Take a step back. Tasmeen, were you happy with the way things turned out in terms of the top four teams?
Oh yeah, definitely. Two of my teams are in the top four, so I'm not complaining.
Which one?
New Zealand and South Africa.
Who's
So
paying for her tickets?
I'm
Who's, is
really,
it an
I'm
Indian
really
guy?
not complaining.
Yeah.
But said nothing. He has been on a diet of hearing people say, "Oh, Australia's the only team to win the World Cup with 11 wins." I think India is on a good enough road to be able to do that as well.
Absolutely.
So I look forward to what's going to happen in
Get
the
him in.
towards the end and closing stages as well.
Can we get in Paul, our friend from Australia?
Yeah.
Paul,
Oh, hi.
my friend. I'm sorry we didn't know that you were here. Somebody, had to just give a tap on our shoulder and ask you to get in. How are you doing?
I'm going great, Sunil. It's a Sunday night here in Sydney. I'm enjoying the batting performance from India, but I'm really looking forward to the big semi-final. Firstly, Wednesday night, I can cheer on my cross Tasman brethren, hope that New Zealand can cause a bit of an upset. And then Thursday night, the rivalry resumes. Australia and South Africa should be massive.
Talking of rivalry, there were two discoveries of World Cup cricket. One is Rachin Ravindra, and the second is a duo called David Brooks and Paul Dinette. That rivalry, we seem to be enjoying pretty much. The banter. Where do you get all your humor from?
I don't think I'm all that funny. I think David's funny. He seems like a guy that would be nice to have a beer with one day. But yeah, I've been enjoying meeting him and chatting to him. And yeah, Ravindra has been an absolute revelation. Looks like he's going to be the dominant batter of the next 10 years for New Zealand.
Paul, I always wanted to ask you this, and I'm glad I'm asking you this on live watch along or whatever they call it. Paul, how did your first love with cricket start? Considering you and Vasco da Gama or Christopher Columbus are of the same age.
My love began due to the West Indies, actually. In the 1980s, because the West Indies were so good, and Cricket Australia has always loved money. They got the West Indies out as often as possible, and Australia was at the lowest point we've ever been. I think there's something when your side is bad, it makes you more of a fan. And there was one game in particular, Australia had lost every single time we played against the West Indies. And in a big game at the SCG, there was Holding, Garner, and Marshall. And the Australians, as always, were looking outclassed. And Alan Border came out and just belted them everywhere. This really hostile attack. Scored 127 not out. My dad videotaped the highlights and the 1 hour highlights.
Whoa.
And I played them every day for the next 2 years till I knew everything off by heart, everything the commentators said. And I just became the biggest Alan Border fan. And then a few months later, the Ashes were on. And I got the privilege of staying up late as a 7-year-old as the night went later and later, watching the cricket from England. And it was just kind of magical. And I've been hooked ever since.
Absolutely. You remind me of my childhood too, because I met Carl Hooper at Zimbabwe. I was bowling to Keith Sinclair, one of the West Indian player. I'm forgetting his actual name. So I tried bowling like Patrick Patterson. You remember Patrick Patterson?
Yes.
So I was imitating Patrick Patterson. I had no idea who I was bowling to in the Harare Sports Club. And guess what? But my run up was 20 yards, and my delivery was close to the popping crease of the next pitch, which means that I was face to face with the batter. Now there was this gentleman who was laughing and laughing, and he says, "Hey man, you've got to bowl from that end." And I suddenly realized I was talking to Carl Hooper, who was the assistant coach of West Indies. So I said, "What are you doing here? You're supposed to be in Australia." He said, "Well, I stay in Australia, but I'm the assistant coach here." I said, "So glad." I said, I reminded him that, I mean, never he would remember, but his first tour was 1987. I was so little, I don't remember. Perhaps it was my elder brother who took me to him, and I still remember his autograph. And I said, "This is the autograph I remember. You, Courtney Walsh, Patrick Patterson." And he was so thrilled. I said, "At 31, when you retire, it is an amazing thing when you've achieved so much in life." He was so happy. So for me, my greatest moment in cricket was to watch West Indies come and play in India in 1988. I have a vivid memory of that, of Sir Viv Richards walking up and down the thing. Incidentally, I reminded him Sanjay Manjrekar got hit on his elbow by Winston Benjamin, and he didn't want to come out and bat. And they're the ones who give all the nice, what do you call it? All the gyan and all the thing of fearlessness and everything put together. But my uncle, who's the team doctor then, said there was no hairline fracture or anything.
Yes.
He just didn't want to go out and play. So that was my first. And the second memory was 1987, India versus Australia at Delhi. Navjot Singh Sidhu belted, I think it was Greg Matthews, out of the park in Delhi. That was the match for the Reliance World Cup, 1987.
That
So,
was
yeah.
a great World Cup. Australia, no one gave Australia any chance, and
Yes.
the Aussies had, for the first time in a long time, started to really take fielding seriously. Bob Simpson, the coach, made them take about 500 catches each day, and they all hated him for it because he worked them to the bone. But they suddenly got really good and won that World Cup against all expectations. I think it was Australia and England winning both semi-finals unexpectedly, and the expectation had been an India-Pakistan final. But England and Australia caused the upset. And because England beat India in the semi-final, and probably because of the colonial history, we had the amazing scene that everyone in the ground was cheering for Australia for the final Eden Gardens. I don't think that would happen these days.
I'll tell you what happened. The backstory was England defeated India, and Graham Gooch swept Maninder Singh out day in and day out at will. He massacred, he butchered. There was a guy called General Dyer who during the pre-colonial 115 years ago massacred, actually with bullets, the Indians congregation in Amritsar. And the second congregation that was massacred there in Eden Gardens was Graham Gooch, actually killing the Indian bowling. And there were blood stains. I can still see some blood stains when I go to Eden Gardens. So yeah. So this is where the luck was, and this is how we were. But yeah, that was our great memory. So you and I have something in common. Maybe you don't have a good plastic surgeon like I do, Paul. That's why I almost address you like uncle or granduncle. But yeah,
you'll have to put me in touch with a good plastic surgeon, Sunil, so I can look as young as you.
Well, that's all in the genes, I can say, and not reveal the name of my plastic surgeon. But Tasmin has something to reveal about the stats right now. What's the current stat?
Oh, it's still not moving too fast since the loss of Shubman Gill. It's actually slowed down. Roelof van der Merwe trying to do something for his team. He's bowled. It doesn't sound too great, but it's greater than everybody else's right now. He's bowled 5 overs and just gone for 25 runs.
That's less.
He just might be the most economical bowler thus far for the Netherlands. Everybody else cruising at 10s, 11s. So yeah, it's good to see from him. Virat Kohli is currently on 12 of 20 balls.
Is there a backstory you want to share about Van der Berg? Paul, do you have a backstory of Van der Berg?
Oh, only that he's the kind of guy that you want in the trenches next year. I think he's just got that fearsome attitude, and he kind of embodies something of associate cricket, that they don't get many opportunities, and when they do, they want to take advantage of every single one. I think that the Netherlands, although they've only had that one big upset, they've been better than the scoreboard has indicated in a lot of their games, and I think they're a pretty good side. And I think my own country needs to take some lead here. That India do it really well. They really support the up and coming countries. Australia is very, very brutal. We haven't gone out of our way to play many games against these sorts of teams. And I think Australia should take a leaf out of India's book and say, in the coming years, let's play the Netherlands in some games, because we want the cricketing fraternity to expand.
The lady.
I can tell you that the first time I ever encountered Roelof van der Merwe, I must have been around the age of 12 or 13 years old. When South Africa came down to play in Zimbabwe in Bulawayo.
Yeah.
Round about then, that's probably when my interest started, after meeting Jacques Kallis, like having a chat with Jacques Kallis and the likes of Justin Ontong as well. So I think for me, Roelof van der Merwe is that guy that you may say he left greener pastures to go to pastures that weren't so green for him.
Absolutely.
But he's come and he's turned around the cricket in Netherlands. You know, he brings, like definitely like what you're saying, he brings that grit to the team as well. He comes around and he shows guys to say it doesn't matter where we come from or what people think the capability of our team is. We play cricket and we play it well. Let's do what we're good at and not entirely worry about what everybody else thinks we're not so great at.
And he's also played for RCB. He was in the squad for that. So the great part there is that, we work for, these are the great signs, people who leave the greener pastures. In fact, he was not even, or the 39-year-old Wesley, I can't remember his first name, even he wasn't a part of the team. Guess what happens? There are 8 players who get work somewhere abroad, and they don't get a central contract. So they leave for county commitments to go and play.
Yeah, Wesley Baresi.
Absolutely. Wesley Baresi. So everybody had hung up their boots. I think Wesley Baresi had already retired by then. So what happens is they get a wake-up call that they have to go and participate, and those 8 players are not there. So Paul, what happens? These band of brothers get together and they say, to hell with everyone, we'll go out and play. And what a match and what a tournament they had in Zimbabwe. I mean, there are 2 things that stood out for me in those in the 30 days that I spent there. One was the weather of Bulawayo. Amazing drive to Bulawayo and Mutare. There are 2 brilliant cities. That should be on your bucket list next time when you go to Africa. And second point is that their great determination and never say die kind of spirit. They were like balls on fire, and they were like kind of cascading down. And as the matches progressed, they were relentless. That's me. Would you agree on Mutare?
Oh yes, definitely. I've been up a couple of times as well. It's a beautiful city. Nothing takes away from the highlands and the mountains and all of it as well. Not sure if you have anything to actually ask Paul right now.
I mean, I'm just enjoying, first of all, the history lessons from all of you. And I think it just also reveals my age, because you're talking about things that happened in the 1980s and the 1990s. And I'm just like, okay, how old are we?
I don't belong
Naledi?
here. Paul,
But I mean, it's always nice to,
it's
learn
Paul
about
the
these
culprit,
things.
not me or
Yeah.
Daz.
I mean,
It's Paul, yeah. It belongs to my dad's generation. That wasn't me. You heard the Shaggy song. It wasn't me. It's the Shaggy song. It wasn't me.
yeah. Paul, I'm pretty sure that you were actually listening to the conversation we had a bit earlier on, before coming to you about the top 4 teams. Quite interesting. I had a chat with Dean Elgar just yesterday talking about, that semi-final match that will be between your country, Australia, as well as South Africa, and also just the rivalry. I mean, going into that match,
Yes, that rivalry part.
Yeah.
Very good. Ask him. He's the culprit. His passport tells you.
yeah, and I just want to know, man, what do you make of that match? There is a Glenn Maxwell, who did pretty well. Not sure if he'll be fit enough to play that one, but I mean, if he's out, it's definitely good for South
Paul,
Africa.
also
But man,
historical enmity in the 2019. South Africa was the English team in 2019, they were the English team of this year's UK team, the English team. And suddenly they go out and defeat Australia. You remember that match?
That's what would probably cost Australia any chance in that World Cup, because it made us have to play England in the semi-final, and we got walloped by them. So yeah, although the rivalry, I think the rivalry to a degree is brought about by how similar the Australian and South African culture is in terms of sport. That it's play it hard on the field, have a beer afterwards, and I'm a bit nervous. I think the law of averages is going to catch up with us. I've been tipping South Africa is going to win this game for a while. Maybe almost just to sort of preemptively give me some sort of solace that if we do lose, I'll be so disappointed. At least I'll be able to point to everyone, oh, well, I predicted this. But I think that, what comes around, and we've had a bit of luck. That 99, the tie where we should have really got eliminated. 2007, Sean Tate was red hot that day. Maybe 2023, it's time for South Africa. I hope I'm wrong.
It's time for Africa. Yes, certainly.
Yeah, man. And I think we are just all looking forward to that match. But in terms of the top four, did you see this one coming? The top four, I think it's something that a lot of people feel like England is missing in that one. Of course, they had a very horrible tournament. What do you make of that top four?
Well, I was predicting England was going to win the whole thing. I was very confident saying that I was, that was my upset. I thought it was going to be England, India in the final. And I was saying how England, just the thing about them is they bat so deep, and they might have Adil Rashid at batting at number 11. They cover all the bases. And then one of the first games, they've sent out Adil Rashid batting at number 8. And I thought, oh, this is not so good. And I cannot explain it, because the last game, against Pakistan, that's kind of what I expected England for the entire tournament. I still think they're a good side, but England have got this ability to completely collapse from nowhere. And I think I mentioned to you guys when I was on the show a few days ago how in the 2013 Ashes, England beat Australia 3-0, and everyone was predicting the same thing in Australia a few months later. And Australia won that 5-0. There were retirements during the series. Kevin Peterson, Jonathan Trott, Graham Swan sort of never played for England again, and it just became a car wreck. And I can tell you this much, that as much as the Australia-South Africa rivalry is big and the Australia-India rivalry is getting bigger and bigger, there are still plenty of Australians, not me, because I consider myself a bit classier than this. There are still plenty of Australians that love nothing more than England losing at sport. It makes their day, and they are having a great time. There's a gleeful attitude in some sections of Australia at how bad England have gone in this tournament.
Well, interesting. Nalini, can I quickly ask you a question? Because there's so many things that I want to ask you, Paul. But first is, do you remember that 438-run chase between Australia and South Africa, that match?
Absolutely. I stayed up. It was 2006, I think. And I don't know why I stayed up, because Australia's got the 434, and I think it would have been around about midnight when the innings break occurred. And I should have done the normal thing, go to bed, because obviously South Africa had no chance of getting the runs.
It was 2006, I guess. 2006 or 8? 6? I remember watching it with my dad, and when I saw the match, I said, I'm done. I'm going to go back to my office and whatever. He says, no, I think it's going to be a good high-scoring match. Who remembered and who realized that it's going to be that good? So your memories of that match and the clash between the two titans then?
Well, it was a very humbling experience, because to score 400 plus in the first innings had just never been done. And there's this feeling of, oh, gosh, we are so much better than South Africa. This is unbelievable. What a joy this is. And then to have them come and chase it down. And the thing was, there was an almost feel of an inevitability over it. The last 15 overs, it had long since lost its feeling of, there's no point in South Africa even batting here. It started to feel like they might well do this. And it was funny how the Aussie bowler Mick Lewis went for none for 113, and it became famous as the worst bowling figures in 50-over cricket. The other day in South Africa, Adam Zampa matched them. And so I don't know if you saw the footage, but the other night when Maxwell got his 100 against the Netherlands and condemned, I think, Baz de Leede to be none for 114, Adam Zampa was cheering beyond all expectation, and it was like, oh, he's not actually cheering for Glenn Maxwell's century. He's cheering because he's being erased from the record book as having the worst figures in the history of one-day cricket.
Guess what? Paul, I have a backstory for that. Tim DeLeed, he was a very successful bowler. I think it was in 2003 or 7. His father, Baz DeLeed's dad, had flown down with his wife just to watch their son play. And guess what? I happened to meet him at the lobby and I said, hey, that's not bad. He said, my son was awful. Even in my worst possible days, I didn't bowl as bad as what my son bowled
Do
today.
you know that Tim DeLeed last played his last game against India? Of the 2 matches Netherlands have played against India, Tim DeLeed played the last one in 2003.
Yes.
And
Or
Baz DeLeed's just taken the wicket of Rohit Sharma.
Ah,
how
that's the circle of
brilliant.
life.
To set India down to 130 runs for the loss of 2 right now in 18 overs.
Not bad. If you were to put in some stats on our figure right now, on our screen, it'll be really nice. By the way, there are more than 2,000. How many people are watching us right now live? All right, 1,200 is not bad. There were 2,000 when Indians were scoring. So it dips in and dips out. It dips in and dips out. Naledi, all open to you.
Yeah, man. I mean, you're just talking about that history of Tim and the son. I don't know if parents should maybe just take it easy on the kids, man. I feel like that was very harsh of him to say that.
No, I think, I'm going to speak from the perspective
Yes.
of being a sports person and a newly recent mom, The question people constantly asking me, are you going to push your son to play cricket?
Yeah.
Are you going to push your son? I said, you know what? He's going to play a sport.
Yes.
Whether he plays cricket, whether he plays soccer, whether he becomes a basketball player, I don't care. He can do whatever he wants to do. If he wants to be an astronaut, he can be an astronaut. But he will not half anything he does. He will give it his 100%. It's just something that comes about athletes that brings about a point of discipline in your life. Just you don't do anything, even 99%, and because at the end of the day, that 1% that you leave behind, when you do make a fault or when things don't go your way, you feel like an automatic failure because all you've learned and all you've trained to do your life is give 100%. So I don't dispute what his dad said. I don't personally think his dad would say to his face directly, but he'd definitely say to an outside stranger because in his mind, he knows the potential his son's capable of. There's his son today, bowling on a World Cup platform, having taken out Rohit Sharma. I believe behind every successful athlete is the right support system at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Without support
Definitely.
system, nothing moves, You can only go thus far, but with support system, I've seen, and now more so, especially with the parents, because they want to see their kids actually turn it into a big multi-million profession. It's not about just going chasing the engineering or the doctor degree. If you are, well and good, all the best to you. But I've seen more number of kids reaching the school than leaving the school, That's the kind of analogy I would do. Paul?
Yes.
Is he still with us? Oh, great. You're still with us. Just wanted to know, you're happy with the way Netherlands came up in this particular thing? Because let me just give you some stats. There were only 3 Dutch-born bred players in the team, in the squad right now. Point number 2. Apart from that, only one bowler, and Tasmin will verify that fact, has bowled to Virat Kohli, and that's Vandermeer.
Yes.
And there are under 19 2 players who played with or against Jadeja and Virat Kohli.
Yep.
Who are they?
There are one under 19 player actually for you for that fact.
Engelbach.
Sybert Engelbert.
It reminds me of a favorite old-time singer called Paul. Do you know? Who was that? Engelbach. No. He'll come to me. He'll come to me.
Not sure. Maybe.
That's a trap question, by the way, just to let people know your age.
Sounding like a trap. Really
So yeah.
like a
Tell
trap.
me what exactly is the score so we can continue our.
The last time I got an update, it was 147 for the loss of 2 in 21 overs.
Paul may have a faster connection. Ask him, Paul, what does your TV tell you?
Let me check.
No, that's exactly right. 2 for 147. Kohli's on 20, and Shreyas Iyer is on 9.
50? Do you think 50 time for him?
Big chance, 50-50, I reckon. He looks like a man determined to do it. It'd be a great time to do it to get the pressure off leading into the semi-finals. And I think it's a kind of an interesting cultural phenomenon that if it was an Australian who was going to score this, it would be big. But I sort of think that there'd be some Indian fans who are possibly more keen for Kohli to get the 50th 50 than they are for India to win the World Cup. Or is that going too far? What's your view on that?
Does you want to answer, or should I take the?
Oh no, go ahead. You can
Okay.
take that one.
Okay, I've had a peep inside Virat Kohli's life from the fringes. I don't claim to be an expert of knowing him, but I know his coach pretty well. And incidentally, his first coaching assignment when he became the coach, I was one of the scholarship students there in his first debut. So this goes on to prove that his coach can actually produce one of the worst cricketers and also one of the best cricketers, which is Kohli, at the same time. So he's so prolific. But at the same time, I can tell you, he lives like a monk, if I were to tell you. Nothing gives him that kind of excitement or sorrow. What you see on the field is a different Kohli that I perhaps know of. The Kohli that I know of through his coach and through his vision is a very sorted guy, has got no qualms about being the King Kohli. He expresses his views as openly as a small child would do it to his coach. And the kind of relationship that I've observed over the last 1 year, it's concluded in my mind that it's not the Kohli that world knows. Kohli is a different, normal, middle class guy who just wants to excel and just get away and get on with his life. He's not the kind of the guy who would go stand at the airport, wear the mask, or just tell people that, hey, I've arrived with 20 bouncers. No, he doesn't want to do that. In fact, he's the last one to get out from the airport lounge, quietly sneak in. I think at times he wears hoodies, dark glasses, and he has his headphones on so that he shouldn't be recognized. He's not the ones who will walk around with this. So that's one part of it. The second part of it, whenever I've heard him getting out and the conversations that he's had with his closed ones, he's admitted that, oh, there was a bad delivery, but he also got chances in life. So he's the first one to admit that, oh, I also have got chances, but I also got a bad ball that got me out. So that's what the Kohli, kind of a Kohli I know. And the success hasn't hit his head. He's only become sharper, smarter, and his circle of friends and the well-wishers have diminished over the last 10 years or so. And this is my complete assessment. Again, I say I don't uh, claim to know Kohli, but I know very well people who speak to him every day, perhaps, or every week. So yeah, and coming from the same coach, same academy, in a different form, in a different way, that's the opinion that I gather. Paul.
Very interesting. I mean, it must be such an extraordinary life to live. I've seen even David Warner releasing some footage when he was over, I think in Bangalore, and leaving his apartment, and within 10 seconds of being out on the street, there were 40 or 50 people surrounding him, and I can't imagine the level of interest and adulation that people like Kohli and Dhoni and Tendulkar would have got. It's almost sad that you can get that successful that you can't live the normal life, that you can't wander down and get a coffee, or can't do the things that the rest of us with anonymity just take for granted. But on the field, he is one of the most mesmeric cricketers I've ever seen. And certainly if you're picking an all-time Indian side, along with Tendulkar and Gavaskar, he's just one of the first batter to be picked, I suppose.
Absolutely, absolutely. You've just said it. Paul, another incident that comes to my mind, and Tasmin, I want to share it with you. Oval, last World Cup. India plays Australia at the Oval. And guess what happens? You know the Steve Smith saga and how English fans are, and more than English, the Indian fans like to get under the skin. So when Smith walked into bat, there's a lot of, you understand the surround sound that was happening. What Kohli does, Kohli just walks up and he just keeps the finger on his mouth and says, everyone to keep quiet, and he stands there. And he stands there very animated and tells people to just let him be. And guess what happens? Guess what happens? There's a complete pin drop silence. There was a very famous cricketer who was sitting right next to me, because apparently on that day, cricket God was kind enough, and I got the most exclusive pass of that place. I could see the ICC people, I could see the greatest West Indian people, South African, and this South African great guy told me that from from a hero, he's become a statesman, just like a statesman would do. And guess what? When Steve Smith walked out of that match, Kohli ran from mid wicket. I guess it was mid wicket or sweep cover. He walked down and he shook his hands and just patted on his back and said, "Good done." So yeah, I mean, those are incidents which we don't know. The way he stood for his team, and he's even fought. I know for a fact he's fought with the BCCI president, top guys, powers that may be, just to protect the nucleus. And this nucleus has blossomed from a caterpillar to a nice butterfly. So yeah, that was my backstory.
Yeah, I remember that well. That made significant news in Australia, and there was a even more respect accorded to Kohli because up until then there had been the feeling that great player, charismatic guy, but the rivalry with Australia hadn't always been that friendly. That the Test series that preceded that by about 2 years in 2017 that had the Steve Smith brain fade incident, and there was a couple of not so nice incidents. And I remember at the time that the relationship between the Australian players and Kohli had suffered a bit of a hit, and it was just so nice to see. I think Kohli probably felt the same way that a lot of Australians did. Yes, Smith had done the wrong thing massively, although it was a failure of leadership in as much as everything else. But the punishment that he got was very, very sizable, being suspended for a year. And then there comes a point when you think he dominated the cricketing world for so long, he doesn't deserve to be booed like that. Draw a line in the sand. And it was very, very nice seeing what Kohli did.
But you know how English fans can be. They can pass on the comment, especially to an Aussie who's just about to drown. They will ever be critical, and they'll not be remorseful about the mean things that they can say. Not, of course, raising their hands or chest thumping or something, but the words that they can say can be really mean. Are you yawning?
No.
Oh, that's good. I caught up doing that. But anyways, so these are the anecdotes that come to my mind. Of course, Steve Smith got big punishment, but he came back pretty soon and very strong. In couple of decades, when we read his autobiography, I'm sure he's going to shed some light about the greatness, and with great difficulty he managed to pass that time.
Well, I was there for his return match in 2019 at Edgbaston, and just on the English fans, Sunil, you're right, but I love them, and I think that the atmosphere at a Test match in England is close to the best you can get in sport. It's a lovely blend of football and cricket, where you've got the rowdiness, you've got the beer drinking, but they tend to watch every ball. They may well have 14 pints,
yes,
and carry on, but they love cricket as well.
There's a band of people who even go for the weekend matches, weekday matches. You would see them dress up and go to Lord's even on a weekday in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Do you know that kind of people?
We got a couple in Zimbabwe also.
We know a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
Do you know some in Joburg, Naledi?
Yeah, I do. I mean, you see them every now and then,
Pick a dress code and just decide we're going to this game.
Paul,
we go.
I've got to finally introduce you to Naledi. She incidentally works with one of the greatest South African sports personality called Robert Morava.
Yeah.
And he's an award-winning radio owner. Am I right to say radio station owner?
Radio. No, he doesn't own, but he works for 4 different stations.
He works for 4 different stations. And you work directly under him. She's an award-winning radio presenter. I just want to ask you, Naledi, since we've never had this chat, how is it like working with a great guy like him and getting the pressure from him? Because you obviously have deadlines. How do they deal with you in pressure? Because I've got to learn that.
I don't know how it works. I just feel like it's so easy to work with him. He just tells you what he wants, and
Just tell us our Indian viewers about his achievements so that they know who we are
oh,
talking about.
oh, there's a lot. Do I even know a lot of all of them? So he is an award-winning radio and TV presenter, sports broadcaster. He's covered a lot of FIFA games. I don't know if you know Martin Locke. He's also a South African great, but from back then. So he
Now
happened
you're
to,
showing us some history.
yeah.
Mm.
I just happen to know a lot of history because I listen. So the same way that he discovered me, I think it's the same way that he was discovered. So he has a very sharp eye for talent. And I think that's how he really just found me. So he has a radio show on 4 different platforms, actually 5 different platforms, which play at the same time, Monday to Friday. He's done a lot of work with FIFA, a lot of work with AFCON. He's just overall brilliant, award winning with multiple awards, and currently nominated for 4 as at the SA Radio Awards. And yeah, we'll see how the one goes.
But what about his sporting achievements in the past?
I don't know. I don't think he played any sports professionally.
Yeah.
He tried to play football and rugby. I don't know how that one went. But yeah, on a professional level, no, he did not play.
But do you get? Does he drive you mad up on the wall and say, "Hey, you've got to do this. You haven't done this. Blah 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 blah," because you've got to have pressures to meet and deadlines to meet.
No. So it's so easy to work for him because well, what I do, which is production, you just need to, line up the script, you line up the guests. So it's so easy to get guests because you just say, hey, we need you on the show. And they're like, which show? With Robert Marau. And then people just stop everything they're doing and then they come through to a show. So I think I work under so much, like it's so easy. So easy. The pressure is there. You have to perform. He is a perfectionist. You have to perform. Deadlines, yeah, every single day, but really it's the most beautiful experience, I guess.
Paul, we've got some of the big royalties of South African cricket. One of them is Mr.
Dinelga.
Absolutely. Just say the name
Yeah.
on the show. Just because she happened to call Robert Morava and say, Robert, get me 4 big guests on my show. Am I right to say that?
You are not completely right.
Half of it.
She made the calls herself.
I made the call myself. I made
But
the
it's
call
fun.
myself.
It's fun. It's fun. Paul, who do we get? Tell me, who's your closest friend that we should grill on our show? Tell us. We can even do a crank call at them.
Well, gee. In terms of famous cricketers, I'm pretty humble.
Forget famous cricketer. We can even call your neighbor even if he's a butcher or a lorry driver. We don't mind doing that because we're just kind of doing watch along and talking about cricket, life.
Yeah.
Because see, people are going to retire who work in bank, who work wherever, but we, like you and I, will be engrossed with cricket till the last day of our eternity existence. Don't you think so?
I think so. I think that it's that bug that I got bitten in 1984. It hasn't let up. If anything, it's got stronger. And we were laughing before about me being talking about the 1980s and 1990s. Half the time I'm ensconced in the 1920s and the 1930s. I love the history of the game as well. So if you think that the 1980s are old, wait till I bore you with some stories of the Australian Tour of England of 1920, 21.
Well, if I were to tell you something interesting, thank you. If I were to tell you something interesting, my co-authored book on the women's cricket history starts from 1745. It's called The Women's Cricket World, 1970. No, 1745 to 2010, and that was
Wow.
the story I had done. Yeah. So
Wow.
I actually looked upon the history of women's cricket, how it grew. Actually, I must tell you, there was 2 English nuns in south of India, Kerala, who introduced cricket to women's in 1922. So that's my introduction to Indian cricket.
So,
That's a
Women's
long
what's the
time
name of the
ago.
book? What's the name of the book, Sunil?
It was launched. I'll tell you, it's got to connect with the World Cup. 2011, Mr. Sharad Pawar was the president of ICC. He looked at my manuscript and a dummy copy. I went up to him and I said, "Sir," and my co-author Anjum Chopra, one of the prolific Indian women cricket captain, batter, and now a famous broadcaster. So we went to Mr. Pawar's, what do we call it, house, to invite him for our whatever that we had done. So she went inside and she got blah blah blah, and he says, I want to, sponsor your book and ensure that it reaches out to all the libraries and all. And there we were. He said, I'm going to make time a day before the opening ceremony of the 2011 World Cup. The last event he attended was mine at the Hyatt Hotel in Delhi, and he goes on to Bangladesh, Dhaka, for the opening ceremony in 2011. So I could see like 80, 100 media guys just swarming to get his quotes, because it was one of the most high profile kind of a event of that life. But yeah, the books were circulated, given to all the interesting libraries and the association, state association. Yeah. So that's how
That's
my tryst with women's cricket had.
So were you the right guy for us to put under pressure
Yeah.
for the entire Australian nation to stop believing that Glenn Maxwell was the first Australian to score a double hundred?
Yes, he
When in
wasn't.
fact it
He
was
wasn't
done
the
by
one.
Belinda Clark.
Belinda Clark.
Absolutely. Yeah, in Mumbai, and she was like so good. She was almost like a robot. And Karen Rolton followed later. I wonder what is Karen Rolton doing these days. Do you have any idea, Paul?
I see her in the media from time to time, but no, I'm not. I'm not 100% sure, but occasionally she'll pop up with an interview. But the one thing I will say is that as it's probably pretty obvious, but the rise of women's cricket in Australia in the last few years is extraordinary, and that the WBBL on television and the Australian women's cricket team is regularly outrating our domestic soccer programs, our rugby union programs. It's a real ratings winner, and along with the Australian football team, which has become huge, the Matildas in recent times, they're one of the most beloved sporting teams in the country. Coming from nowhere 10 years ago, they were doing well, but no one noticed. Now they have really entered the mainstream.
So who retired day before? The
Meg
great
Lanning.
Australian lady.
Meg Lanning, what a retirement! I've always had the dream of most probably playing alongside her, against her, or just meeting her in general, because she walks away with 7 World Cup titles under her belt. She's probably one of the most decorated captains in my era of cricket, in the least to say.
I like the word "my era."
Of course, definitely.
It's still there. It's still
yes.
counting.
Yeah.
Oh yes, it's still ticking down. I told you, I still got a couple of years to fill my boots up with.
Paul, I must tell you this little story, and I don't know if she's going to interject and disagree completely. So when I was talking to her to get her to India to do this watch along, do whatever television, she says, "Yeah, I want to, because I know my days are, playing days are numbered." And in the back of my mind, I thought that I'm talking to a person who's retired, overaged, overweight kind of a person. My apologies. I was on phone. So I said, okay, come here. This is the second good option to you other than playing. So she comes here. I look at her and I see, how old are you? She says 29. Is that what you said? And I said, how long have you been playing? She said, 15 years international for Zimbabwe. I've got a little 13, 14-month old son, but I want to do both. So I take her to Arun Jaitley Stadium to get my press accreditation. So she tags along. I said, please come, I'll show you. When she sees the stadium completely vacant, she says, I don't want to hang up my boots till the time I play here. Then guess what? I take her to watch the match from a VIP gallery. Which was that? What was that match? I'm forgetting.
Bangladesh.
Bangladesh and Sri Lanka.
Bangladesh-Sri Lanka match. She tells the director of the stadium that I want to play here. Tell me how. So I see people changing their stance.
Oh yeah, definitely. I don't believe I was at a stage where I was considering retirement, but like any normal athlete, you gotta have a contingency plan. People get injured. When you're at my age and you get injured, the recovery process gets shorter and shorter. It becomes
Yeah.
a longer thing to bounce back from, as opposed to.
But let me tell you,
when
Paul was
get
at your
injured.
age 50 years ago, and I just crossed it last year.
Oh, there
So,
we
yeah.
go. There we go. So definitely, it's good to explore options. As you know, I am an accredited coach as well. I recently got accredited through Cricket South Africa as an umpire. So I see myself having a long life in cricket. May not be on the field, but definitely a long life in cricket. But from the experience I've just had in India, the atmosphere, seeing the stadiums, being in the stadiums, you know, and just this. I told you, I don't get mad, but like all the research work and late nights of writing notes, that has definitely shown me I'm way better spending 3 hours in the gym and chasing a little red ball around for a couple of more years before I feel like this is a path to choose. But definitely, I take nothing away from the experience. You know, it's been great doing the research and doing the work because you get into the minds of not just players and coaches, but the reason why teams do the things they do as well. And I think to a certain extent, it's definitely going to have an impact on the way my game is going to come about as well when I get home as well. But yeah, crazy experience in India. I take nothing away from it, none at all.
What about watching the uh, match from the stadium itself? The craziness of that.
Yeah, you know, obviously it's like 4 times probably the size of stadiums back home, crowd capacity as well. And for me, it's not so much what's going on the pitch, but the crowd reaction to what's happening in the whole.
What about the hospitality? I'm told that you did not have the food there, but the food was lavishly laid out.
Yeah, you know,
Paul, explain it to Paul. Explain it to Paul.
squad, you understand, Africans, we don't do too well with the temperature gauge in the food, you know. So we're quite selective. We've learned a bit of a lesson. You know, we've been around to a couple of festivities happening in and around the city, and we've learned to stay on the clear side of stuff that looks very colorful, because it will be colorful in your stomach as well to a certain extent. So yeah, but it's been great. You know, there was food on offer for us as well, and I'm not sure, Paul, if you part of the vegetarian clan as well. I think if you come here long enough, they could convince you to join them on that side. But
Yeah.
as Africans, you need to know we love us some meat, anything meat related, be it chicken, be it anything at all. You know, so that's definitely been a different change we've adjusted to in the past.
But isn't
month
it
and
like a
half we've been here.
lavish wedding party where you have cricket at the front, you have people mingling, hugging each other in the VIP box, and then you have just behind the box you've got a lavish
Oh yeah,
5,000
they had
people.
set up a whole full buffet. There was so much food involved in it. It was, I love to smell it, but the tasting it part, like
Yeah,
I
I
have
get
a low hit gauge, but like the smell is brilliant. You know, I have a bit of Indian inheritance in my family as well, so I've grown up around the smells, and it's just great. It smells beautiful. It looks beautiful. You know, it's just the selective nature you have to approach it with as well. At the end of the day, I'm pretty sure you'd agree with me. You know, we out of our entire clan that's come out here from Africa, we actually love. I would say we the experimenters of our clique. You know, the other
The two
girl
of us,
Tandy
yeah.
out here with us. She is not too adventurous on that tasting food, but Naledi and I, we all for trying. Then later when we
Different
get home,
things.
we're like,
Yeah.
chicken, or what do you think it was that
Dal.
left us feeling this way, you know?
And we would know what it
Yeah.
was.
What's the current score? Sorry, before we come back on this.
They are currently on 190 for the loss of 2 after 26.5. So call it almost 27 overs. Virat Kohli currently on 48 or 50 balls. He's hit a couple of fours. He's got 5 fours and 1 6. So I see him most probably constructing his innings more or less the way he did the other day when he scored 100, you know, probably looking to play a chanceless innings, because I don't think Netherlands would put a chance down. They've been quite a great fielding side thus far in the World Cup for me as well. Not too many errors in the outfield until you see them getting langy later on in the game when they feel like all hope is lost. But I don't think they'd give up the chance of Virat Kohli putting one in the air and putting him down, to be honest with you.
Let's ask Paul what's his assessment of the score. 190 in 27 overs. Paul, where do you think India is going to go and stop?
Well, I mean, at this rate, anything's possible. You could see them getting in excess of 400, and I think the crowd is going to be getting more and more excited that Kohli's almost halfway there to that 50th century. So it's very, very exciting, and got to feel a little bit sorry for Netherlands. Just on the food front, I'm with you, Tasmin, in the sense that Australians are very, a lot of Australians are very, very proudly meat eaters. There's a joke here that if you go to a barbecue and you say you're a vegetarian, they'll give you chicken. But I've been to an Indian wedding in Australia where it was vegetarian, and some people were a bit concerned, but at the end of the night, they all said, actually, just exactly what you said. I could be convinced to eat that for the rest of my life. So yeah, when I go to India, I've never been, but when I do go, I love spicy food. Although I think I could be found out maybe, and my taste buds won't be quite ready for it. But I'm really looking forward to it.
Paul, what are you doing in this December, Jan? What are your plans for covering cricket in life?
Well, I'm going to be watching everything. Plenty of social media gibberish on Instagram and TikTok and Twitter, and plenty of immersion in it. Watching the Australian summer, watching whatever's on. What about you?
I was planning to be in South Africa, watch the uh, India South Africa series, and also thinking of doing a small get together and calling David Brooks there. And it'll be such an iconic thing if you were to join us and just watch the match. And we will watch live streaming of England playing West Indies, two of the worst teams in the possible present times, take on each other, and we'll get after David Brooks. But the best part is he doesn't defend the English side. He just takes another dagger and just stabs them even harder than the previous time.
That sounds great.
I think
That sounds great. Yeah.
he's actually
Go on, go on, go on. You have some suggestions, some advice, something, because I was in South Africa last year or this year, early this year, for a month and a half, 3 months. I mean, in between, plus minus whatever. I think it's one of the most beautiful places on earth. And I did road trip from Joburg to Cape Town, and I think Cape Town is like a fairy tale setting that I went to a couple of places. They actually had lakes in their house. Could you beat that? That ostentatious way of living, I could only find in my fairy tale book or something in my imagination. Cape Town is so good when it has to be, and so difficult when it wants to be, especially some pockets.
Yeah.
I've got Naledi here, so I don't want to be, and we're still 15 minutes, 10 minutes away from our lunch. So yeah, I better be kind to her.
Yeah, plus you're coming to South Africa, so you have to be careful with what you're saying, you know.
How is Langa as a place?
I mean, it's a township, so the dynamics of townships can be safe, and the safety can also be very questionable. So I really wouldn't suggest that you know, visit the townships, especially going there alone. Rather, you go with the local of the person.
Absolutely. And
yeah,
this is
yeah.
what I want to do, Paul. We are here creating a fan channel here. This discussion is purely not from a purist or from a punditry kind of a thing. We are here analyzing stats, and we are talking tales, and we are sharing our lifestyle, life history, and our experiences from ground zero.
Yeah.
That's what we are doing. So yeah, I would like to go there, have the chai, spend time with them, eat their meat.
Do you know Okota?
Okata.
Kota.
No.
Yeah, when you come through, I'm gonna get you to taste one of the tastiest kotas in South Africa. It's food, like it's a bani chow, but it has do you know a bani chow? Yeah, but it doesn't have meat like they do it in Durban. So it has chips, it has Russians, cheese, polony, Vienna or Russian. So like it's just junk food.
Even get him to eat a kwacha burger.
Yeah, ooh,
I love me a kwacha burger, girl.
the best. So yeah, and there's
So
a
just
lot.
a quick update. Sorry to disturb you guys. Virat Kohli's just crossed over onto his 50-run mark right now. That's coming off 54 balls, 5 fours, and 1 6. Alongside him, Shreyas Iyer is currently on 30 of 29 with 3 fours to his name. And India is 198 with a loss of 2 after 28.1.
My God, in the next 20 overs, they're going to beat the hell out of these.
Oh, yeah. I believe as long as, we've seen teams, as long as they have wickets in hand, the acceleration is fearless.
Absolutely. Nice word. Acceleration is fearless. It reminds me of the old 50-over matches where Dean Jones and Ian Healy, Simon O'Donnell, Steve Waugh would explode at the end. Paul, do you remember those days?
Absolutely. And that's what I used to get scarred by, the fact that Jeff Marsh would open the innings and score about 80 off 120, and everyone would say, "Oh, well done." And meanwhile, we've got Steve Steve Waugh and Simon O'Donnell and other big hitters sitting there, and they come out and only get a little bit of a go right at the end. But they were wonderful one-day games. But you look back at them and think it's such a different game that that Australia would score 190 and Richie Benaud would say, well, they've given themselves something to bowl at, and invariably they would have, and it would be a really close game. And you look at the modern game, and it's chalk and cheese. I suppose the bigger bats and the no ball rules have changed things a little bit, but Dean Jones with a strike rate of about 75 was regarded as about as aggressive as you could get. And there was a couple of years there where he was the number one attraction in Australian cricket.
Absolutely. I remember the 1986 series very vividly. Now that we are talking, Greg Ritchie was a guy, remember? And Raman Lamba from India. Greg Ritchie and Raman Lamba would go at each other, and they played the same kind of style, and they would bat like, that they are out to prove a point, and that's what happened. I wonder what has happened to Greg Ritchie. Which factory does he own? Where does he work? We still have 5 minutes to go. Before we
hold that thought for me.
An update.
Virat Kohli will not be seeing his 100
Oh.
today. He has just fallen to the bowling of Roelof van der Merwe. It had to be Roelof for me. He's been bowling spectacularly this morning. He looked like the pitch that their opening bowlers started on was not the same pitch that van der Merwe was bowling on. And I think, I spoke about it. I spoke about him earlier to say he's kindly the most economical. Kohli just backing away, trying to give himself room to be able to cut the ball back out. He gets a big inside edge back onto his stumps.
That's an unlucky out. That's an unlucky out.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. In terms of Greg Ritchie, Sunil, he had a television career in Australia for a while. He was a bit of a comedian, and then he hosted golf in America. And most recently, a couple of years ago, my parents went to a local cricket club dinner, and he was the guest speaker. And his nickname was always Fat Cat, because there used to be an Australian kids TV show where a man dressed up in a big cat suit, and that was the character, Fat Cat and Friends. I used to watch it when I was a kid. And Greg Ritchie, rather cruelly, was nicknamed Fat Cat because he looked a bit like him. But when they announced him as coming out to speak, they said we can no longer call him Fat Cat because he's lost all this weight. He's now in the best health he's ever been. So yeah, Mum and Dad said he was absolutely hilarious when he spoke.
But thank you. That's a great update, because I still remember his green baggy cap that he would wear, and he would just demolish the Indian bowling attack. 1986 tour it was. Remember the famous tie match, the tie test match between India and Australia? Greg Ritchie bowling to Maninder Singh from the pavilion end, bowls in outside the off stump, the ball spins in, gets him, hits him in the middle of the stump, and umpire Venkataraghavan gives him out. Remember that?
I do. I think we're talking about two different Gregs. I'm talking about Greg Ritchie. You're talking about Greg Matthews, I think. So that was the
No. I'm talking about Greg Ritchie for sure. Greg Ritchie, the top three or one down batter. He was a little fat. Yeah. Yes, I remember. Yeah. But I'm talking about he's from the same era as Greg Matthews.
Yeah, it was Greg Matthews who was bowling who got the wicket at the end, though. The one that the umpire gave it out so quickly that he almost knocked his own head off. And I think Ravi Shastri was at the non-striker's end, and the umpire put his finger up so quickly and put it down again that Ravi Shastri didn't even realise that he'd been given out. You look at the replay and you think DRS definitely would have been invoked these days.
So coming back to our travel to South Africa, so this is what we intend doing. We want to play out the honest feedback, something which commentators these days don't talk about. We want to talk about stats which really matter to our fans. And we are at the fag end of our show right now for a 15-minute, half an hour lunch break. But we will come back for a 5 o'clock show. No, 4:30 show right now. And then we meet at 5:30 for our television channel. But Paul, are you enjoying the discussion, what you see on television? I hope it's meaningful, useful to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this sort of thing. I mean, I interview myself about cricket in the shower. So the fact that I can actually talk about it to people and people actually talk back to me, it's wonderful.
Naledi, you want to end the show by...
Just to let you know, before Naledi does take us away, Virat Kohli scoring that 50-odd right now does push him to the top of the batting rankings. He does find himself in first. because he was 42 runs behind Quinton
Oh,
de Kock.
Quinton, yeah.
So Virat Kohli going into the semi-finals is now your leading run scorer
Wow.
of the tournament. Despite not getting the 100, he
Who
still
cares?
finds himself somewhere with a meaningful position heading into the semi-finals.
That's nice. That's
Quinton
nice.
has a lot of work to do in the semis, eh? If he wants to remain at the top.
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah, so this is where we are leaving it for this watch along. We will be back for the part 2 and in just a moment to keep you up to date with what's happening in and around that match. It is India up against Netherlands.
Thanks, guys.